Why do you feel lost? Not just confused, not just uncertain. I'm talking about that deep, aching sense that you're drifting through life with no real direction. That hollow feeling that something is missing, but you can't quite name it. And that quiet terror that maybe there's no deeper meaning, and you're just going through the motions, hoping it all makes sense someday. We all feel it. I felt it. You felt it. And if you're honest, you're probably feeling it right now. That's why you clicked. Because something inside you is whispering that life isn't supposed to feel this disjointed. That there's a truth buried underneath all the distractions, all the obligations, all the noise. And you want it not just for clarity, but for survival. You want to know why you feel so disconnected from yourself, from others, from the world. And more importantly, you want to know how to come back home.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So let's go there, not with easy answers, but not with cliches, but with brutal honesty and deep philosophical truth. Because the reason you feel lost isn't that something's wrong with you. It's that you've been trained to abandon yourself. From the moment we're born, we are shaped by our families, by our cultures, by our institutions. And slowly, we are taught to override our inner compass. We're taught what to value, what to fear, what success looks like, what failure means, what kind of life is acceptable. And we internalize these lessons, not because they're true, but because they're loud. And over time, we forget that we once had a voice of our own. A voice that didn't care about status or approval or productivity. A voice that only wanted truth. But that voice gets buried. And in its place, we become performers. We wear masks. We chase goals we never chose. And we wonder why we feel empty. Let me ask you a hard question. When was the last time you made a major life decision based purely on what you wanted without factoring in what others would think? If you're like most people, the answer is either a long time ago or never. That's not your fault. It's the design. The world runs on people who are disconnected from themselves. People who will work jobs they hate to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't even like. People who will follow trends, obey systems, and consume endlessly because they don't know who they are without it. That's the machine. And the feeling of being lost. That's your soul resisting the machine. But here's the twist. Most of us don't even realize we're lost until something breaks. A breakup, a failure, a burnout, a death. Suddenly, the scaffolding collapses, and we're left staring at ourselves with no script, no direction, no map. And that moment hurts. But it's also sacred. Because in the wreckage, something real begins to emerge. A question, a revolt, a spark. The realization that maybe, just maybe, the life you've been living isn't actually yours. So what do we do with that? How do we fix it? First, we stop pretending. We stop pretending that we're okay when we're not. We stop pretending that our lives are aligned when they're not. We stop pretending that the path we're on is meaningful when it's not. You can't start a new journey until you admit you're lost. And that's not weakness, it's wisdom. The greatest transformations begin with a single, honest sentence, "I don't know who I am." Then we begin the excavation. We strip away everything that was placed on us, layer by layer. The expectations, the roles, the fake smiles, In the borrowed dreams, we ask, who am I without my job title? Without my relationship status? Without my social media profile? Without my achievements? And at first, the answers are terrifying, because we've built so much of our identity on these things. But underneath the fear is something extraordinary: truth, authenticity. You, not the edited version, not the socially acceptable version. Just you, Mu. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once said, "The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all." That's the real tragedy. Not that we fail or suffer, but that we slowly disappear and no one notices, not even ourselves. So how do we find ourselves again? We start by turning inward. We stop outsourcing our sense of meaning to external metrics. We stop waiting for someone else to validate our existence. And we begin to listen to the quiet voice within us that's been silenced for years. And that voice doesn't shout, it doesn't beg. It simply waits. And when you finally give it space, it will speak. It will tell you what you love, what you fear, what you need, what you must let go of, and what you must become. But be warned, the path to yourself isn't easy. It requires unlearning everything you were taught to believe about success, happiness, and identity. It requires solitude, stillness, honesty. It may require walking away from things that look good on the outside but feel dead on the inside. It may mean disappointing others, losing status, starting over. But what you gain is worth it. You gain presence, clarity, purpose. You gain yourself. Let me ask you something personal. What are you doing right now in your life that you know is not in alignment with who you truly are, but you keep doing it anyway? Sit with that. Because that dissonance, that internal split, is the source of your suffering. You're not lost because life is meaningless. You're lost because you're living a life that doesn't match your inner truth. And here's the secret. The way out is not forward, it's inward. The modern world will tell you to hustle harder, to achieve more, to fix your life by adding more to it. But that's a trap. You don't need more. You need less. Less noise, less distraction, less pretending. You need to subtract everything false until only the truth remains. And that's when the real magic happens. When you get quiet enough, when you get honest enough, when you get brave enough, you start to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And that remembering, that's the moment you stop being lost. Because you realize you were never really lost. You were just buried, covered in layers of conditioning. But beneath it all, your soul never left. It was just waiting for you to come home. So ask yourself right now, if I weren't afraid of being judged, rejected, or misunderstood, what would I do differently with my life? That answer, whatever it is your compass. Follow it, even if it scares you, especially if it scares you. Because fear is often the gatekeeper to your most authentic self. And as you begin to follow that path, you'll notice something strange. The world won't always support you. Some people will resist your change. They'll try to pull you back into the old version of yourself. They'll say you've changed, that you're being selfish, dramatic, unrealistic. But that's only because your freedom threatens their control. Your authenticity forces them to confront their own lack of it. And that's uncomfortable. So they'll try to stop you. not out of malice, but out of fear. Don't let them. Keep going, because your life is too sacred to be lived for someone else's approval. And one day you'll wake up and realize you don't feel lost anymore. Not because you've figured it all out, but because you've stopped looking outside for something that was always within. You'll realize that being lost was never the problem. The real problem was forgetting that you were the map all along. There comes a moment, if we're lucky, or perhaps if we're brave, when the noise of the world becomes unbearable. Not just annoying, not just overwhelming, but deeply wrong. You feel it in your body, in your breath, in your bones. That ache that says, this isn't it. And it's not always dramatic. It can happen in the middle of a meeting, during a quiet walk, or while staring at yourself in the mirror. It's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. The moment you realize that the reason you feel lost is because you've been navigating with someone else's compass. All your life, you've been moving toward goals that don't nourish you, trying to impress people who don't understand you, living by standards that aren't even yours. And suddenly, it hits you. You've never really asked yourself what you truly want. You've been too busy trying to be good, successful, acceptable. And in that pursuit, you abandoned your truth. Not because you're weak, not because you're a failure, but because the world is designed to pull you away from yourself. And now the journey begins not towards some distant destination, but back to your own center. But how do we do that? How do we find our way back to ourselves when we've spent years or decades living someone else's life? We begin with stillness, not the passive kind, but a fierce, radical stillness. The kind where you stop running, stop numbing, stop distracting. You sit with yourself without music, without screens, without noise, and you listen. You listen to the thoughts you've been avoiding, the emotions you've been suppressing, the questions you've been too afraid to ask. And at first, it's uncomfortable, painful even, because you'll hear the truth, and the truth might hurt. It might tell you that you're in the wrong relationship, that your job is killing your spirit, that the life you've built is out of alignment with your soul. But that pain is not the enemy, it's the map. It's your soul's way of saying, you're off course, come back. Most people distract themselves precisely because they don't want to hear that voice. Because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And once you feel the weight of living inauthentically, you can never go back to pretending. But that's why stillness is so powerful. It strips away the illusions. It removes the masks. It forces you to face the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are and what you need. And then comes the next step, radical honesty. Not the kind of honesty that tells someone you didn't like their haircut. I'm talking about the kind of honesty that strips your identity to its core. The kind that asks, what lies have I been telling myself just to survive? Because we all lie to ourselves. We lie to avoid pain, to maintain comfort, to protect the image we've crafted. We say, I'm fine, when we're empty. We say, this is just how life is, when we're miserable. We say, it's too late to change, when deep down, we know that's not true, we're just afraid. But healing begins with honesty. You can't build a true life on a foundation of falsehoods. So you look at your life and you ask, with brutal compassion, where am I out of alignment? Where am I betraying myself? Whose approval am I still chasing? And most importantly, what would I do if I weren't afraid? That last question is the key, because fear is what keeps us lost. Not the absence of direction, but the refusal to follow our own. We say, "I don't know what I want," but often we do know. We're just terrified to admit it, because admitting it would mean changing everything, leaving things behind, confronting the chaos. But the truth is, the chaos is already inside you. You're already suffering. You're already lost. So why not suffer for something real? Why not walk through the fire toward a life that's actually yours? And here's the thing no one tells you: you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a 5-year plan. You don't need perfect clarity. You just need to take the next honest step. That's it. One step toward truth. One step away from the noise. One step into alignment. And then another. And another. It's not about reaching some mythical destination called enlightenment. It's about reclaiming your inner authority moment by moment. And as you do, something shifts. You start to trust yourself again. You start to notice what feels good, not just pleasurable, but right. You begin to recognize the difference between what feeds your ego and what feeds your soul. And in that recognition, you begin to build a new compass. Not one designed by society, but one forged in the fire of your own experience. That is your inner compass. And once you begin to follow it, truly follow it, you'll realize you were never really lost. You were just navigating someone else's map. Let me ask you another question. What would your life look like if you trusted your inner voice more than you trusted the world's opinions? Sit with that. Feel it, because that is the crossroads. That is the line in the sand. Are you willing to disappoint others in order to be true to yourself? Are you willing to risk rejection, failure, and uncertainty in exchange for authenticity, freedom, and meaning? That's the real trade. That's the price of coming home. It's not easy, but it is worth it. And here's the wild part. The more you live in alignment, the less lost you feel, not because you've found all the answers, but because you've stopped needing them. You realize that life isn't a puzzle to be solved, it's a mystery to be lived. And in that mystery you find peace. Not the peace of comfort or control, but the peace of being real, of being whole, of being you. And from that place, you begin to attract different experiences, deeper relationships, more meaningful work, a life that reflects your inner truth, not your outer performance. And people will notice. They'll see the light in your eyes. They'll feel the depth in your presence. And some of them will be inspired to start their own journey. That's how transformation spreads, not through preaching, but through embodying truth, and through living so authentically that others remember it's possible. So if you're still feeling lost, I want you to hear this. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're awakening. You're unraveling the false self. You're shedding the noise. You're remembering something ancient and sacred. That your life is not a race. It's not a performance. It's not a product. It's a pilgrimage. And the destination isn't out there, it's here, inside you now, waiting. So sit quietly, breathe deeply, and ask, what is the next honest step I can take? Then take it, no matter how small, no matter how scary, because that step is the beginning of everything. And maybe, just maybe, that's the moment you stop feeling lost, not because you've arrived, but because you've finally started walking your own path. If this spoke to you, don't just scroll away. Sit with it. Share it. Speak it. Because someone else out there feels lost too, and maybe your light will help them find their way.